In a converted factory in the north of England, engineers are welding together something that could quietly rewrite how entire nations make electricity. It is not a jet engine, though the company building it is famous for those. It is a nuclear reactor, shrunk down and standardized, so it can be assembled on a production line instead of poured, piece by piece, at a single sprawling construction site over more than a decade. If it works, the same machine could be replicated dozens of times over, at a fraction of the cost engineers once assumed nuclear power required. For a country trying to cut carbon emissions without losing reliable power, that promise alone has been enough to attract billions in fresh investment, from the UK Treasury down to private equity funds hunting for the next big infrastructure bet. The idea is called a Small Modular Reactor, or SMR. Traditional nuclear plants are custom-built giants, bespoke projects that take armies of contractors 15 years or more to finish, with every single plant essentially a one-off experiment in construction management, learning almost nothing from the last one built. An SMR flips that model entirely. Build the same reactor modules over and over inside a controlled factory, then ship finished components out to different sites and bolt them together on arrival, the way an aircraft fuselage is assembled from repeatable, pre-tested parts rather than custom-fitted on location. Engineers argue that repetition, not novelty, is what finally makes nuclear power affordable, because the 10th reactor off the line should be cheaper and faster to build than the first, the same learning curve that made airplanes and cars steadily cheaper over the 20th century. The company chasing this vision is Rolls-Royce, a name most people associate with jet engines and luxury cars, not atomic power plants humming away on the edge of small Welsh towns. But that public reputation hides a much longer and quieter history. For more than 70 years, a specialized Rolls-Royce division has designed and built the compact nuclear reactors that silently power Britain's fleet of nuclear-armed submarines beneath the ocean. Engineering knowledge now being redirected for the first time at this scale toward the ordinary civilian electricity grid. Few outside the defense world ever knew this division existed, yet it is now the backbone of the company's biggest civilian bet in decades, staffed partly by engineers who once worked exclusively on classified defense programs. That decades of submarine expertise has been scaled up into a design meant for full-sized power stations rather than vessels hidden underwater. Each Rolls-Royce SMR is engineered to generate roughly 470 megawatts of electricity, enough on its own to supply power to around 1 million homes, all packed into a footprint dramatically smaller than a conventional nuclear plant, while still relying on proven, pressurized water reactor technology rather than anything experimental or unproven at commercial scale. That deliberate conservatism is a design choice. The goal is to convince skeptical regulators and investors with familiar physics, not flashy new science, since public confidence in nuclear power has historically hinged on avoiding surprises rather than chasing novelty. None of this ambition comes cheap. Each individual reactor unit is projected to cost in the region of $3 billion to design, manufacture, transport, and finally install on-site. Multiply that figure across a planned fleet of reactors meant to gradually replace Britain's aging coal and gas power stations, and the total investment climbs into the tens of billions of dollars, a combination of direct UK government funding and private capital, all betting that nuclear power's moment has finally returned. Supporters call it an investment in energy independence. Critics call it a very expensive gamble on a technology with a long history of blown budgets and abandoned projects stretching back half a century. That enormous bet became official policy in September 2024, when the UK government's dedicated nuclear agency, Great British Nuclear, formally named Rolls-Royce SMR as the winner of a national competition to become the country's chosen small reactor developer. It beat out well-funded international rivals, including the American-Japanese firm GE Hitachi and the veteran nuclear company Holtec, in a contest that effectively decided Britain's nuclear direction for the coming decade. Government officials framed the decision as essential for both energy security and thousands of skilled manufacturing jobs across the country, at a moment when Britain's heavy manufacturing base has been steadily shrinking for decades, a decline officials openly hope this project can help reverse. Winning that competition unlocked far more than industry bragging rights. It placed Rolls-Royce SMR at the very front of the queue for billions of pounds in public co-investment, alongside the political backing needed to fast-track planning permits, secure land, and reserve grid connections. Resources that earlier generations of British nuclear projects had to fight tooth and nail for. Year after frustrating year, often losing momentum in the process. It also gave the company political cover to plan an entire manufacturing supply chain around a single, standardized design, rather than reinventing the wheel for every new site. A bet that only makes financial sense if enough reactors are eventually ordered, in Britain and abroad, to justify the cost of the factories themselves. The leading candidate to host the first factory-built reactors is Wilfer, a windswept coastal site on the Welsh island of Anglesey that once hosted an older, now decommissioned nuclear power station. Its appeal is entirely practical rather than sentimental. Existing high-voltage grid connections, direct access to cooling water from the sea, and a local workforce still familiar with nuclear operations, all factors that could shave precious years off building an entirely new site from a blank field. Local communities remain divided, some welcoming the promise of jobs and investment, others wary of hosting nuclear infrastructure once again after decades of living beside a plant now being slowly dismantled. Speed is the entire selling point of this approach. A conventional nuclear megaproject can take 15 years or longer from the first shovel in the ground to the first electron reaching a customer, with budgets that routinely double or even triple along the way as unexpected problems surface. Rolls-Royce claims its factory-built approach could compress construction at each new site down to under 4 years, because the hardest, most error-prone engineering work happens indoors, under tightly controlled factory conditions, long before any concrete is even poured at the final location. If the timeline holds, it would be the fastest nuclear construction Britain has attempted since the plants of the 1970s, back when nuclear power was still viewed as the technology of the future rather than a cautionary tale. Around 90% of each reactor, by Rolls-Royce's own internal estimate, is meant to be manufactured inside dedicated factories across England, sheltered from weather delays, skilled labour shortages, and the constant site-specific redesigns that have plagued nearly every past nuclear megaproject. The finished modules, some roughly the size of a shipping container, are then loaded onto heavy trucks or barges and transported to the final site purely for assembly, not fabrication. Rolls-Royce has already begun building the factories themselves in Sheffield and elsewhere, betting on demand before a single customer reactor has been fully approved. A costly gamble that only pays off if the orders eventually arrive on schedule. But raw ambition is now colliding head-on with unavoidable bureaucracy. Before a single reactor can ever be switched on and connected to homes, Rolls-Royce's design must pass all the way through the UK's Generic Design Assessment, a famously rigorous, multi-year regulatory review that scrutinizes every safety system, every material choice, and every conceivable failure scenario the reactor could ever realistically face, jointly overseen by both nuclear and environmental regulators working in parallel. Only once that single design is certified can it, in theory, be replicated at every future site without repeating the entire review from scratch, which is precisely the efficiency the whole factory-built business model depends on. That approval process alone is expected to stretch across several full years of technical review, and it represents only the first of many milestones still standing ahead, including separate site-specific licensing, additional environmental permits, complex project financing agreements, and then the actual multi-year physical build itself. Each stage a fresh potential source of delay for a flagship project that, as of mid-2026, still exists mostly on paper and in prototype form. Every one of those milestones requires its own funding, its own paperwork, and its own opportunity for something to go wrong, which is exactly why so many nuclear forecasts turn out to be optimistic. Rolls-Royce insists that, despite all these hurdles, the earliest reactors could realistically be feeding electricity into Britain's national grid by the middle of the 2030s. Industry skeptics respond with a well-worn, almost weary observation. Nearly every major nuclear project in modern British history has been promised on an eerily similar timeline, only to slip by years, and sometimes by more than a full decade, as costs quietly mounted and technical complications multiplied along the way. Nuclear history, they point out, is littered with confident opening dates that never actually arrived, promised by executives who genuinely believed them at the time. The most vivid cautionary example sits just a few hundred miles down the coast. Hinkley Point C, Britain's newest large-scale nuclear power station, is now running years behind its originally announced schedule and tens of billions of dollars over its initial published budget. An expensive and very public reminder hanging directly over every smaller, supposedly faster nuclear project that has followed in its wake, Rolls-Royce SMR very much included. Defenders argue factory production avoids Hinkley's core problem, a custom design built only once. But the comparison still haunts every progress update invoked by journalists and skeptical lawmakers alike whenever Rolls-Royce announces a new milestone. Yet the underlying reason for all this urgency has shifted dramatically in just the past few years. Massive data centers, built specifically to train artificial intelligence models, now demand enormous, genuinely round-the-clock electricity supplies, and the technology companies operating them are actively hunting for reliable, carbon-free power sources that can be built close to where all that computing actually happens, rather than shipped across a strained national grid. That shift has turned tech executives, not just government ministers, into some of the loudest advocates for new nuclear capacity, a striking role reversal from just a decade ago when Silicon Valley barely mentioned the technology. Rolls-Royce and its competitors have quickly started pitching small modular reactors directly to that booming, cash-rich market, promising dedicated on-site power plants that could sit right beside a data campus and run continuously, 24 hours a day, without the intermittency problems that wind and solar farms inevitably bring to power-hungry, always-on computing operations that simply cannot afford to lose power. It is a striking reversal. An industry once seen as nuclear's rival, renewables, now finds itself competing against nuclear power for the very same corporate customers and the very same available grid capacity. The company has already pulled in serious outside capital on the strength of that exact pitch, raising fresh investment from backers, including a Qatari sovereign wealth fund and the Norwegian energy giant Equinor, all of them wagering heavily that global demand for compact, factory-built nuclear power is only going to accelerate sharply from here, driven as much by artificial intelligence as by climate policy. That international money also raises the stakes. A stumble now would not just cost Rolls-Royce, it would cost investors watching closely from Doha to Oslo, and it would make the next reactor project, wherever it is, harder to finance. If Rolls-Royce actually hits its ambitious targets, the payoff could extend well beyond that single, windswept site in Wales. Britain could position itself as a leading global exporter of small reactor technology, selling completed, factory-built modules to other countries racing to decarbonize their own electricity grids while still keeping their national power supplies stable, affordable, and secure against future shocks. That kind of industrial win is rare for Britain, and officials have made clear how much political weight now rests on the success of this single program. But if the mid-2030s promise slips, exactly as so many nuclear timelines have slipped before it, Rolls-Royce's factory-built reactors risk becoming just the latest chapter in a very familiar British story. Brilliant engineering, genuine national ambition, enormous sums of public and private money committed early, and a start date that kept quietly receding year after year, further into an uncertain future. For now, the reactors sit half-built in a Yorkshire factory, waiting for regulators, financiers, and the slow judgment of history to decide whether this time really is different.